Hello and welcome to the special Planning Commission meeting for June 30th. I didn't ask anybody to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll start with that. Could I get everyone to please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so for Planning Commission, the only one who's excused this evening is Commissioner Reed Ryan. Commissioner Rachel Burns and Commissioner Anderson will probably be here a little bit late as there's traffic. And so we'll go ahead and allow them to come when they, we'll let them join our meeting when they get here. At this time, we, in the meeting, we allow public input. So time has been set aside for any person to express ideas, concerns, comments, questions, or issues that are not listed at a public hearing on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. I'm going to close the public comment time. And we'll move on to the work session. This is a work session for the general plan draft. And this is city initiated. So Sarah, what are we doing? Are we going to have a presentation or how are we going to do this?
Well, yeah, Christine did have a presentation.
Okay. So now,
We have it. I gave her the jump drive, but
we can all gather around your phone.
we have it on mine too.
okay.
I mean,
So just make sure you're talking into the mic for the recording.
what we'll do is, because all the materials that are in the presentation are also are in the plan. So if you'll bear with me, when I get to a point, we'll give you the page number of what we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what I wanted to do first is tonight, we're going to review the organization of the document that you received, the general plan, and then talk about where we've been, what the process has been so far. And I know for up to a point that will be a repeat for you since this is not your first workshop meeting about this, and then review the big ideas that have emerged as part of this general plan. And then I want us to discuss as a group, the Planning Commission, to discuss the vision statement that is in the draft general plan. And then we'll discuss anything that you've identified in your review for each of the general plan elements, and then talk about what the next steps are. Is that acceptable?
That sounds good.
Okay, great. So the document, if you turn to the table of contents isn't ready. Sorry, so we can't turn to the table of contents. If you turn to page 6, you'll see in the document we have in the introduction section on how to use this plan that outlines what is in the plan and identifies the statutorily required elements, as well as the other elements that are important to the plan. So we have a community values element where some of the big picture things are identified for the direction of the city over the next 10 to 20 years. The land use and neighborhood section, which is a statutorily required section that also includes your future land use map, which is the reference that you as the Planning Commission will use in implementing the plan moving forward as you hear applications. The housing element, which includes the moderate income housing plan, which is a statutorily required plan. The economic development element, the transportation and connectivity element, which is a statutorily required plan, which includes your functional designation road map by statute. the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails element, the Community Facilities element, Community Sustainability element, the Water Preservation element, which is a statutorily required element, the Natural Hazards element, and then an implementation strategy. There's also an appendix to your document that includes a more in-depth review of demographics, growth, and economic development analysis than you see in the body of the document, and the public engagement report. So that's how the plan is organized. Within each of the elements, we begin with how that element helps support and implement the citywide general plan vision, and then discuss the background, history, and analysis associated with the topic, what we heard from the community when we were doing our public engagement, and then the goals, strategies, and actions in order to implement the vision and overall goals of the general plan for that particular element, whether that's housing or economic development or land. So that's how your plan is organized. Do you have any questions about that? Oh, okay.
Just ring in if you guys have a comment, and I'll recognize you to make comment.
So the general plan process,
Bryce had a comment. Go ahead.
oh,
So this is like super overwhelming. And so it's like drinking from a fire hose. I'll be honest. Well, is there a reason why, like Appendix B, is that in the beginning of the document or at the end of the document? Or
it should be at the end of the document. I
okay.
think that when it got sent out to you,
Okay.
I think it got, the
That
order
answers
was
the
reversed.
question.
The assumption is that you would start with the plan itself. And if you want, the way that different people use a general plan in different ways. It's people like your city planners and you as planning commission members who read it cover to cover, and probably your assistant city attorney. But most people will go to your general plan and identify the elements or the components of it that interest them based on what their development proposal might be or what they're looking to do or where their property is located. So we try to break it down in a way that it makes it easy for people to use in that way. So if they're interested in coming to Saratoga Springs and doing housing, they can look at the land use element and the housing section and learn what your goals are and what some of the strategies are for those two elements. Your staff will also use the plan to pursue grant applications, which is why we put things in your transportation section and parks section that talk about what your goals are for those things, so that your staff can use that to support grant applications and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So the idea is that within each of the elements of the body of the plan, we have adequate information for people to understand the basis of the goals and strategies that are identified there. And then if they want more information about the data and the analysis, say, relating to growth, then they can go to the appendix and get more, so that people who are looking for the higher level of information, they don't have to dig into all that detail. Does that make sense? It does. Okay, and I'm sorry that it came to you reversed.
That's okay. I'll have more questions later, but that answers the question I had.
Yeah, so the idea is that not to overwhelm people.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So in the general plan process, it's roughly a 3-phase process that, it's iterative, but 3 really pronounced phases. The first phase is what you have, which is when we do an existing conditions analysis where we review and document existing plans and data which is where we look at your growth projections and want to think about, what the city's going to be in terms of people and jobs and things, 10, 15 years from now. We also collect and document community input, particularly relating to what's important to people to preserve in the community, what should be addressed to improve and preserve quality of life, and also what is it about Saratoga Springs that make people feel connected to the community? Why do they like being part of Saratoga Springs? The next phase of the general plan process is to think through what you need and want as you continue to grow, and what you want Saratoga Springs to be like in 10 or 15 years from now. In this phase of the planning process, we document and reflect back to the community. We document and reflect back to the steering committee what we've learned and what we've heard, and verify that, confirm that, start to talk about how that translates into emerging ideas, emerging goals and vision for moving forward, and kind of what are the steps we want to think about to get from where you are today to where you want to be in 2042 or, a 10, 15, 20-year horizon. So we review and get feedback on the emerging ideas, identify strategies to address growth, and then draft the vision and community values for review. And it's that point that we start talking about how you get from where you are to where you want to be. In your case, we had the public open house, probably 2 months now, maybe. Is it 2 months? Yeah. Where we gave people some information on the direction the plan was going and got some feedback on that. And then use that information that we've been learning all through the process to draft the goals, strategies, and actions, update your draft and your draft future land use map, and create a draft implementation strategy. So that's what you have in front of you tonight, are the draft plan, the draft map, and the draft strategy. Okay? So in the plan, there are several big ideas that came up as a result of the public engagement process and our discussions with you, the City Council, and the steering committee. One is the importance of balanced development, so that for fiscal sustainability, that as you continue to grow in terms of population, to make sure you have the right balance in your tax base to continue to provide services in an effective way. So that means identifying areas of non-residential development to make sure that those opportunities remain as growth occurs. Another big idea is to identify an area for town center development, that creating a town center for people to visit and gather and have a sense of identity is important to the community. Another one is to reinforce Saratoga Springs' community identity through some urban design elements, so that it feels like you're in Saratoga Springs when you cross the border, and it feels special and people feel connected to it. Continue to demonstrate forethought in development and planning processes. Saratoga Springs has demonstrated best practices in planning and development, particularly in their use of development agreements and planned developments for large areas. And that's something that has helped you grow effectively in the way that you have, and that this plan contemplates that best practice, those best practices in how growth and planning occurs will continue in Saratoga Springs. So those are the big underlying factors that cross all of the different types of elements. So we sort of think through how each element contributes to those big ideas.
Commissioner Kilgore had a question or comment.
Yes. So when we read the entire general plan, those points that you just mentioned, stand out in particular sections. I wonder if we could have like a front page or early part in the plan, like a summary that says the things that you just said. So the main takeaways based on residents' input, the things that the city needs to focus, the things that I like everything you said. I like that like a town center was really key. The rec center I think was really key, and traffic,
Right.
And then you also said that there are things that we've done right. The city has done right, and then things that we really need to pay attention to going forward. Maybe funding or something like that. And just like maybe 8 bullet points, or separated into these are the great things that these are the overall things we want to accomplish till 2050. These are the things that are problematic, or what residents feel that we need to really address, like traffic, and maybe preservation of open space or something like that. And then at the end, okay, these are the steps that we want to do. And just, I don't know what you call it, like a perspective.
And, I think we would do an executive summary,
That's it. Executive. Yeah.
right? So I think
Just a very concise
Yeah,
executive.
and maybe even
summary.
bullet points with a little bit of explanation. And then we know exactly what to look for. Because I think you had all those points in the plan, but you'd have to get through like 70 pages to pick each one out. I think once you have the table of contents, it'd make it a lot easier.
right,
But,
and yeah,
But also, even within the sections, sometimes we have to go to the end, sometimes it's at the front. And so maybe if you just had that executive summary at the very beginning,
sure,
because then we know exactly what to hone in on.
sure, absolutely.
If you could do that.
Yeah, that was a great point.
Anything else about those underlying? Okay. So let's talk about the draft vision statement. And as it stands today, the vision statement is, in 2042, Saratoga Springs is a culturally diverse community with active recreation and economic development, promoting an exceptional quality of life.
Where are we at in the packet?
Oh, so, I'm sorry, page 10. I forgot that part.
It's page number 6, though, in the plan,
Oh,
but the packet's probably,
Oh,
because we have the appendix in the,
oh,
page 10 of the big one.
We're obviously really good at numbers and page.
No, it's not the page number the PDF has.
well, yeah, I didn't anticipate technical difficulties, yeah.
first real problems.
So the first thing I want to talk about is, in our last steering committee meeting, I think it was steering committee, yes, we talked about the vision statement. And I have to say there was a lot of discussion about the vision statement in that steering committee meeting.
Nearly a fist fight, I would say, electronic.
It was, thank goodness it was on Zoom. But so some of the things that came up in that discussion centered around the terms, the phrase culturally diverse. So I'd like your feedback on that.
I'm glad that we left that out.
Well, it's in there.
It's in there. It crept back in.
Oh, it is
Well,
in there.
It's in there
I skipped
because
over that. I skimmed over. Okay.
because at the end of the meeting, there had been so much and so many options out there, I wasn't sure which was which, so.
I guess
I know there's some discussion on what the meaning maybe of that would be, which, I mean, culturally diverse is good. And we do want
If
that.
the words hadn't been
But-
co-opted to mean something
Yeah.
other than what we think it means.
Well, the issue I have with it is how does this plan promote culturally diverse?
Cultural diversity.
Is this culturally diverse community? So how does the plan itself do that? And how does the city then implement that value? And I don't see that in the plan.
So I think the thought is that housing diversity and creating additional opportunities for social interaction and gathering places will support cultural diversity, but it doesn't none of those things go out and specifically create cultural diversity.
Yeah, because if I imagine cultural diversity, say like in a city like Los Angeles, where they have, they'll have like Little Tokyo will have a Japanese parade.
Right.
And then Little Korea will have a Korea parade. And I'm thinking culturally, maybe it's a little bit too old fashioned, but I'm thinking like, culture as an ethnic culture. I guess if we have a culture of like hunters and non-hunters or something, and you have but even then, we don't have a way to promote that, at least not in the plan. And so I'm just wondering how, or is this something that's aspirational that is beyond the plan? So I guess
Well, I think that if we can't draw a clear line from the phrase to what the goals, strategies, and actions are in the plan, we probably want to rephrase that.
Yeah, because I remember years ago in Salt Lake when they were trying to revitalize certain areas. I remember Sugar House, for example, said that they're going to attract gays and lesbians because the gay community tends to bring a lot of artistic flair, I guess. And I mean, it's somewhat stereotypical, but that's what the actual report said. They also tend to spend money because a lot of their households tend to have two working couple, like working and earning, and so they spend a lot more money at restaurants and things like that. So they actively promoted recruitment of gay and lesbian people to move to Sugar House. So that was an example where that kind of cultural diversity was actually implemented by the city, and then they had an actual strategy to do that. We don't have that in this plan,
Right.
so I'm just wondering, how do we make that work? And so, is that really a value that most residents hold, or are we Saratoga Springs culture? And that includes all the outdoor stuff, whether it's lake oriented or bicycle oriented or whatever it is.
Which I think we've captured in the active recreation, right? I think that the feeling of the steering committee, if I had taken a head count, probably would have rephrased culturally
I think
diverse.
removing the word cultural
Okay.
can still include some of what we talked about, some of the interests of the steering committee, but also maybe expands and maybe provides a better way of
Right.
recognizing, well, what is diverse. I mean, if we say Saratoga Springs is a diverse community, well, that can mean a lot of things. We talked about the arts, and I think that's fantastic. I think it would be a wonderful thing to improve the arts opportunities here. It also covers the housing, which is part of the general plan, walkability, and drive. I think it just really covers a lot of things without really getting into specifically cultural.
I argue that point and say that unless you can see, like Ken was saying, a direct path on how we're achieving diversity in the community in the plan, it should not be part of our vision statement. And I just don't see, I can see that we're adding some additional outdoor things and we're working on things in this plan, but I don't see like a clear direct line to diversity in, we still are allowing religious organizations to use open space as part of their development and counting that towards it. And so that is in no way promoting diversity. And I don't think that we should have that statement as our statement. We're not being diverse by allowing that.
So are you suggesting either removing it or maybe including it in the vision statement as far as what type of diverse? I mean, the way that I'm seeing it is it can include lifestyle, but it also includes housing types.
But where is that? Can you draw a direct line to where that's in the general plan that we're promoting that?
Yeah, I think in each section, like in the housing section, it does talk about Saratoga Springs is actively or promoting various types of housing, like it actually says town, multifamily, single family, and then it talks about townhomes. And so for housing, I think it does cover. And then for the recreational, I think it does talk about trying to make more use of the waterfront, as well as things like ATVs and then the bicycle, and bicycle and walking trails. So I think in the sections there are, but you're right. I mean, maybe that's the whole point of the vision statement, is that it tries to unify all that, but have to be less specific. That's why I think culturally is too specific.
I think culturally and diverse are both too specific for that, and I would say that there are definitely other words out there that could fill this role, and I personally feel.
You have something in mind that would work better? I don't.
2 more minutes to
So
think.
get the thesaurus out on the.
Sorry, let me.
I'm kind of torn on the diverse thing. Like, for sure, culturally should not be in there. I don't think we look at that at all. When you think of diversity, I think of more what Ken was saying, where, hey, we do have different types of housing, we do have different types of recreation. So when I think of diverse, that's kind of what I think, but then other people would think something else, right? So there should be a better word out there, because we can look at it different ways. It's not a bad word, because we do have that kind of stuff in there, but I don't know, but I don't have a better word. That's why I'm not helpful on that.
And
But I agree with the culturally part. I don't think that we don't address it at all in the plan.
And I can't remember what we did in the steering committee, but I know we scratched out culturally diverse, but I don't remember what we
What you
put
came up with instead.
back in
Yeah.
for that. I know we had economic sustainability, and I'm glad that was taken out.
Multifaceted?
I mean, you could say well-rounded. That's subjective as well.
That also seems like it's finished. It's a finished product, isn't it? A little bit.
So many things, but I don't know.
So I'm going to let you guys stew on that for a little bit. And we'll come back to that at the end.
I'm going to throw one more thought
Okay.
out there. I appreciate what Commissioner Sprosty Burns said. I wondered if it would help as we're stewing over this to specify in the statement what we mean by diverse community if we kept the word. So where it would say something like Saratoga Springs, I think the word is, I don't know if it fits there, but a diverse community, and then we spell out how. What do we mean by that?
But then you have this long vision statement, which you don't want a long vision
Which is what we
statement,
were trying to
right?
move
We're
away
trying to
from.
move away
Right.
from that, exactly.
Our old vision statement was pretty long, way too much to chew on.
I think 1 or 2 sentences is great, but I don't want anything more than that. Ideally, a single sentence, but.
Anyway, we could talk about it after we've gone through the plan.
The
as
other,
well, so
Yeah.
we can-
the other thought as we're stewing over this is there's been some discussion, and I think it was Commissioner Ryan that brought it up first, and maybe it's Kilgore, about live, work, play, that pointed that out. Maybe we leave the word diverse out. We just simply say something that it's, a great community where we can live, work, and play, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway,
I was just thinking about some of the stuff we put in there that came from the kids, the pictures they drew. There was one that I'm trying to remember what it said. If I can find it. I hope to see a strong community with lots of kind people. I also hope that I hope that we will be welcome to all newcomers. I thought that was good. I don't know how you put that in a sentence, but
I just want something
a
in there
welcoming community.
maybe.
Instead of a diverse community, you could say
Yeah.
a welcoming community.
Oh, I like
Welcoming, well, she put welcome, but it should be welcoming. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
blame her. She's in elementary school, I mean.
So,
I mean, this is the guiding
right.
statement.
So what I'd like to do is I'm going to put a pin in this. And I'm going to capture welcoming. And now what I'd like to do is go through each of the elements, get your feedback on each of those, and then we can circle back and see if your creative juices have been flowing about the vision statement, or if this discussion about each of the elements might bring something up that we want to think about. So let's start with the community values element. This is an element that is intended to give sort of those big picture approaches. So the goal for community values is that Saratoga Springs is the first choice for current and future households because of its unique identity, connection to nature, and family-friendly amenities.
Sorry, where are we at?
We are on page 11, that I think is 11. I don't know what it is on your,
It's 11.
Yeah, it is.
your backwards documents. Okay. So the intent of this section is this is where we really, sort of lay that out there. I will tell you that under strategy 1, those actions are going to be updated. They refer to some of the actions in the community facilities and parks plan, and they didn't get updated to match what happened back there. So they will be updated. And the parks section is one that we'll be discussing with the city manager on Tuesday. So there will probably be some significant changes to that particular section. So when we get to that section, we'll talk about the things that you're concerned about that you want to see in that revision.
Something I didn't, it wasn't clear to me on was how, so you use this format for the other sections where you state, where there's a goal stated, and then there are strategies listed. So are the strategies meant to be either strategy 1 or strategy 2 or strategy 3, or are they meant to be simultaneous, or are they meant to be sequential? Like after strategy 1, then we implement strategy 2. Or are these just options that
Well,
we need
these are strategies that we see as ways to implement your goal. In some cases, they may be sequential. In some cases, they may happen at the same time. And I can't think of a case where it would be an either or, though.
Okay, so they all need to be implemented at some time.
At some
in order
time.
to achieve that goal
At
by
some time,
by
right.
2042.
Right.
Okay,
That
okay.
these are things that should be taken into consideration. And when the city council has their budget retreat each year and prioritizes, their work plan for each year, these are some of the things that they would want to consider.
Okay.
I'm handing out the slides on paper.
Then we're to the part where there's not much on the slides except titles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in terms of the strategies for community values, creating gathering places and amenities to support those goals related to social interaction and a sense of connectivity to community, creating a sense of citywide identity through your urban design elements, and then a couple of strategies that relate to keeping your general plan relevant over time. So if we don't have any big questions or, I'm sorry, you can turn your own page, but any questions or comments about that section, we can move to the land use and neighborhoods element. And just to remind you, this is a statutorily required element where we're required to identify long-term goals and propose the extent and distribution of land for various land uses include projections of population density and intensity. So you'll see on the future land use map, we have areas of low-density residential and medium-density residential, and so forth. Integrates with water use and preservation.
Can I say something before we move on?
Yeah,
I do have some thoughts. I'm looking at page 77.
77.
At the end of the document is a summary, correct? Last section. The implementation plan.
So.
Is that what reflects what's?
So what the implementation plan is a table that gathers all of the goals, strategies, and actions in one place. I want you to ignore everything to the right of where they're listed from the implementation period. That we need to discuss that with city administration.
Okay.
But
Because I'm looking at the community values section and page 11, the action items under strategy 1. There's, it's not exactly the same between page 77 and page 11. Action 1 is identify funding sources and construct a new library, which is also on 77. And on page 11, identify funding sources and construct a senior center, which I'm not, I don't
It's
know.
number
if I'm ready
2.
to- That's
That's in
number
there,
2,
but
and that's fine. That one,
Different section.
I'm not sure if that's,
that's one that is
we don't
going to,
know if we're going to construct a
that's
senior.
going to change.
Okay. And then.
I can tell you right now, that one's going to change.
Action number 3 is different. Identify funding sources and construct a recreation center that utilizes the hot springs.
Oh.
Number 3 is work with city center developers to fund, design, and construct a town center.
They got
Oh,
reversed.
they got reversed. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
That's what happened. Okay, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I had some concern about constructing the recreation center based on some lots of comment that I've seen about that. At this point, we're maybe identifying funding sources and determining whether
But that's,
recreation center, correct?
that's something they're going to talk to the finance manager and the city manager, what that's going to, wording's going to be, right?
Right.
Gotcha.
As with all general plans, we're drafting the document in an evolving environment.
Right,
You-
right.
The city doesn't stop planning, the city doesn't stop,
Right.
making decisions just because we're in the middle of a general plan. And they take, 9 months to a year. And so this is, at the time that was first drafted, there was going to be that was the thinking. And so it's evolving. So we'll be giving
Okay.
we'll get that language to evolve as well.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Sorry for any confusion. What's happening?
Well, we have a really old projector and
I was going to say, I haven't seen one of those in a while.
screen, but I don't even know how the screen comes up, because
Because look at that, it's a little screen.
but I know. Oh, there you go. But I don't know, because look.
Hey, I have an idea. Look, are there legs that come out?
That's probably it's
Here?
like inside the.
Look there.
Has something here, like,
Is it like an accordion? And
We're in the,
But he does
Okay.
roads.
Yeah.
yeah, he does roads, I was going to say.
No instructions.
Just stand there for a couple hours.
I know.
I'll just hold it.
You want to do
Hang it on a coat rack or something.
It's a funny screen.
I mean, is it even big enough? Oh, maybe turn it sideways.
Oh, look, there's, and it looks like it says caution, be careful.
Turn it this way.
But not your lips.
Yeah.
Out, and you put it on the table. Oh my gosh, I think we're putting it out. So like, see this? Like
Oh, little feet.
little feet.
Imagine we killed all these trees.
That's funny.
I've never seen it.
Hey, oh, that's locked now. Those little feet are locked. They, are the other little, that seem like it's gonna stack. Can it open more? Oh, it's okay, that's it. I mean, it's
So now you got to really zoom the other,
I was going to say, we're going to move,
bring, maybe this can come.
Zoom it
I
out.
don't know how much this is gonna help, but
It's better.
yeah.
we just know which one we're on.
Then I'll take my glasses off on it.
Again, put it on a chair or
Chair right behind him, it rolls.
grab that chair, grab Ken's chair. With the projector on it. Will it be tall enough? Oh, it has the tilt, so maybe it will be tall enough. Okay, we'll try it.
You can't see, huh? You can't see.
actually, don't watch it, you'll get motion sick.
Because this works pretty good.
Just,
Paper.
let's just keep rolling.
Okay.
Yeah. We're off on our scale here, so.
It rises up, it raises up.
Closer so I see the chair.
The chair raises up.
He was a
Oh,
neat.
it's there.
The cord is longer. But, I mean,
Who can see that?
but then the chair's moving.
By 2042, we'll have advanced technology.
That works.
Action item number 4.
That works when you want it to work.
So we're going to try to plow through while
Keep going.
Yep.
this is happening. All right, so if you'll turn, oh.
We're slanted, I don't know how to unslant it. It's sitting on those cords on one side, so. Maybe it's this. Well, no, I mean like, no.
Bring it this way.
It was fine on the wall.
From future land use map? That's what we have.
Yes, so if you turn to page 25, you'll see the future land use map. And I want to point out a couple of significant changes from your current future land use map. You'll see that some of the major revisions to the future land use map include a new annexation boundary that's based on an action taken by the city council a few weeks ago to amend the annexation boundary. So your revised future land use map takes that into account. In addition to that, we have the current proposed alignment of the Mountain View corridor. That's the big red line that comes through the whole length of the city. And then along that alignment, we have at each of the interchanges areas identified for future commercial development. We also identified areas of future commercial development represented by the red hatching within the city center development plan. That's not the right words exactly. That's an area that is governed by a development agreement that gives total entitlement for housing units and for non-residential square footage. With this map, we're identifying where we anticipate the non-residential square footage to occur along the corridor. We've also identified the area for the town center. That is along Pony Express and around the areas of medical and, it's not on there. Medical and Market Drive. The map is on, forgot to give it to you, so. but I can see them looking on there. So those are in addition to those changes, with the input of your staff, we've updated other areas that have been since the last time that land use map was updated. So those are the major changes that are being recommended. If you turn to page 24, is that right? You'll see the future land use map designations, the definition of each of the colors that you see on the future land use map. Okay? So if you have any questions or thoughts about those proposed changes to your future land use map.
My biggest eye-opening moment, and I should have known this, is that the zoning for mixed water use, we only have one zone right now on our current zoning map for mixed water use. Now, on the land use map, on the future land use map, there are several. There are like five areas or something.
Right.
And I realize how precarious that is because with a lot of the applications we get, we often get requests from developers to amend the zone even if it goes against the land use map. And so it's easy for us to not approve additional a mixed water use. The only zone that we have right now is along the Jordan River. Everything else is, it's just on the land use map. And so I realize now that as a planning commissioner, I really have to really pay attention to the land use map, especially in those zones that we have so few of. Because if we just go ahead and turn it into residential or whatever the application is for, then we're not going to have anything along the lake, potentially. So I'm glad it is identified in the land use map. I think it currently is as well, but the future one definitely shows it. And so I think that as a planning commissioner, that's something that kind of opened my eyes because I'm really concerned about that. That's one of the things that makes Saratoga Springs unique. All the other things other cities have too, but we just don't have, they don't have the access to the water like we do.
Right.
And we're losing it quickly. And so I thought that was an eye-opener for me by seeing it, by putting the two together like this.
Right. So the current zoning in a lot of those areas is agricultural. So for the most part, people are going to come to you and ask for a rezone. And when you refer to the future land use map, you'll see those areas that are identified as mixed waterfront, so that you and your staff can work through their applications to make sure they meet the goals of the mixed waterfront designation. One of the things we heard from the community was the importance of taking advantage of the waterfront, both in terms of opportunities for economic development, but also to make sure that there's trails access and connectivity to the waterfront. And so your Trails Master Plan does that, and you've already identified that. So this plan assumes that those goals will continue to be implemented.
Yeah, because one of the recent applications we had where the developer was trying to create like a boardwalk sort of, with mixed residential and commercial. And I mean, as far as Saratoga Springs is concerned, it's like the first attempt to really try to make use of the fact that that property was close to the water. Mm-hmm. But we had a lot of public input about how they didn't like that idea because of traffic. So it's like a not in my backyard type of thing. We want more use of the waterfront, but when it's actually going to be developed in your area, then it's like, well, we don't want the traffic, we don't want that anyway, or we don't want that, we just want more single-family homes. So it's just something that we have to kind of take a stand on, I guess, from a planning perspective for the future.
In your plan, there are some case studies, some small case studies of how different communities across the country have taken advantage of waterfront opportunities. And they range from a pretty intensive use, which is probably what makes people nervous, to a more locally focused sort of use. And the feedback that we got from the steering committee and a number of other people was that it's somewhere in the middle there. Something that can be an opportunity for people to come and experience Saratoga Springs, but also an asset for the local residents. So that there's some information in your plan about waterfront development.
While we're on the waterfront and not changing zones, I'm glad that one of the action items is to not change any commercial, whatever it is, to residential. Because that happens, my time on the commission, that has happened a lot more than I care to admit. So I'm glad that's one of the action plans. And I wanted everybody on the commission to know that, because we have some coming up.
I agree.
It's hard though, because if the property owner abides by the code, it's really hard for us to say, no, we're not going to approve that.
Well, there's always a pathway to achieve something. I mean, it's like changing any law. The law is a law, but we live in a free country. There's a pathway to change the law, and we can follow the due process. But the answer may be no, because it's in the best interest of society or the community or whatever to retain the current law. And to me, I think that's similar. The property owners have a pathway to change the use or, the zone, and they have the right to do that. The answer may still be no, because it's not in the best interest of our community, but they have the right to be able to pursue that and present their case.
Totally agree. I'm just saying it's hard for us to say, the planning commission to recommend disapproval, because I don't think the land use map is law. It's just a recommendation.
That's right.
Whereas they've got their process, which is law. I mean, code. And if they're following it, and the state also says that if there's any dispute, we should find in favor of the property owner.
I think we're talking about situations where the zoning doesn't match what they want to do and doesn't match what is in the future.
Or the land use. It may be zoned agricultural.
Right.
But the land use may be mixed waterfront, and they want to do a warehouse
Right.
there.
And so
that wouldn't be in the best. The strength that we have as a community is we create the land use, and we decide as a community, this is what we want to see. This is what we feel will create the ideal community for where we are. And so that gives us the ability to say yes or to say no.
Right. So we're talking about situations where they want to change the zone, not when they already have the right to do something.
Well, so it's agriculture zone, and then they want to change it to say residential, even though the land use is
Something else.
regional commercial. So as a planning commission, the land use is only recommendation, whereas they're following the code. Everything that they've submitted is correct. And so it's always hard for us to then go against that, because all we have is like a land use recommendation. As
Right,
opposed to,
but you'll need to consult with your city attorney.
right.
So
And
we're
look, he
talking
walked right
about.
back in.
Yeah, sorry.
So Fred, we're talking about what what land is currently zoned as opposed to what the land use in the general plan says it could be. And then, so for example, it's zoned agricultural. The future land use map and our general plan says it's going to be mixed waterfront. And the applicant wants to put a warehouse in there. Even though they follow the application process,
Don't change.
what
So Sarah is really good at this, but it's my understanding that zoning is what is binding.
okay.
Okay, so if they want to change the zoning, then they have to request a zoning change. Okay, the land use element of the general plan is aspirational, and so and it's kind of legislative. It's up to you as the planning commission and ultimately the city council to implement the land use element of the general plan.
Now, one of the recommendations that been given with this proposal is that we follow closer to the land use and not give it up. And one of the justifications for that, and I saw this, it clicked in my mind, was that we need to provide, I think it's 4,500 more jobs in the next 10 years or whatever it is to keep up with a one job per one house. So if we lose these places that are supposed to be commercial, then we're going to be losing the potential jobs.
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct. If you convert commercial into residential, then you're potentially losing the jobs that would be created in that commercial zone. Now, you could also convert some residential areas to commercial at times,
I'm always in favor of that.
but I don't think that happens very often. to be
No.
honest. And Sarah is, like I said, a much better expert at this than I am.
I'll go ahead and add to that. So just as you mentioned, we tend to get pressure. You know, a landowner has a piece of property and somebody comes to them and they want to buy it now to put something on it that's not on the general plan. And so we as cities get pressure to give up the property, but the general plan, you'll see it says, 2042. And it does that intentionally because it's talking about what land uses do we need to have a sustainable city. Sustainable in the sense of, do we have enough tax base? Are we going to be solely residential, or are we going to have commercial? Are we going to have jobs, like not just retail jobs, but office jobs and medical use jobs and things like that? Are we going to have opportunities for people who live in our city and own a house in our city to also be able to work in the city? That's a challenge we have right now, is that we have a lot of our residents are working outside of the city. And the more jobs we can have in the city, the more sustainable we are in terms of even the transportation and the traffic, So having people be able to drive 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes is going to help with some of the other issues, as well as create an overall balanced economy within the city. We do get a lot of pressure for, and we've heard multiple times with commercial zones, that could never happen here. That could never happen here. I mean, and you see it happening now. So things that people were saying 5 years ago that couldn't happen here, you see it happening now. Right now, office, especially because of COVID, has sort of stalled, and people are saying, you're not going to get office. But we are going to get office. We're not going to get it today, but are we going to get it in 2 years? Are we going to get it in 5 years? You know what I mean? So, but if we give up that land because people are saying you're not going to get office, then we won't have it when we need it.
We're not making any more land.
No. Well,
there's
In Utah Lake, maybe.
Annex.
let's not go down that path. That's a rabbit hole.
And
You
you
can
did have
annex
good
property.
comments on the mixed waterfront. It's the same thing. We have had a vision for a long time for some mixed waterfront development. And the residents next door, they don't love that something more dense than them is coming in. Nobody does. And so it's that long-term vision, though. You know what I mean? Do we want to maintain that goal that we've set when we wrote that code in 2017? So we wrote that code 5 years ago, and this is the first applicant that's come through actually trying to apply the mixed waterfront. And then we have some other locations set aside on the general plan as well. If we give that up, we never get mixed waterfront.
Well, and like the examples that you showed of waterfront development in the packet, they're usually more dense. And that was one of the concerns that some of the public comment had said for that application that we had, that it just is too dense and too much traffic. But that's exactly what you expect in the waterfront development. So that's where it's really hard to reconcile what we want to do as planning versus what the residents actually want in their back, next door to them. And I don't think that the code or a land use vision is strong. I mean, I just feel like it's not always strong enough for us to stand up to it. I mean, it's our job to, but we haven't been able to up till now, we haven't been able to at all. So, I mean, that one I guess did pass, but it's hard to point to a resident that this is what we want. You know, maybe this general plan will help with that, but it's been hard up till now.
And that one hasn't been on the council agenda yet. We're working on development agreement with the applicant to get that language refined. And one thing that our code is actually lacking in waterfront is design standards.
I agree.
So that's something that we as staff are going to come back with and add design standards to that zone, but it's not in there now. So it's taking this current application. Because it's the first one we've gotten, we're able to see a little bit more clearly where there might be some holes when we wrote it 5 years ago, you know, and now it's being applied and it's like, wait, there were some really design is going to be important in the waterfront. And so we're going to work with this applicant on that, and then we'll come back also and add some elements to the code.
Okay. So any other observations about the future land use map or the designations? No?
Could I say one thing?
Yes.
I think the boundary, our city boundary, may still be a little bit wrong. There's an area, that big square area, that has actually been annexed now into the city. And I noticed that on nearly every map.
Okay, we'll coordinate with Brian Gallegos. That's who gives us the
Brian Gallegos, yeah.
Gallegos. Yeah.
Brian has those updated maps,
Okay.
so make sure you get all of the annexed property. There's several that have been.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. Anything else on the map? And that's been a great discussion about.
Yes, thank you for allowing us to do that.
No, it's an important discussion because we have heard consistently about the importance of balance, and the reality of our market has been for a while that if it isn't already, or you don't, hold it for non-residential development, residential development will come. It's just been going like gangbusters. So that's an important thing. So in terms of goals and strategies for land use, that future development in Saratoga Springs reflects the community's preferred vision, and that to update the future land use map to reflect the community's preferred vision. So there are several actions in there. To including the town center on the map and the waterfront, mixed waterfront areas on the map. So those are things that are already reflected in the map, but this is just the stated goal to support that. We also have a strategy to work with property owners to create balanced development within the city center district area. So those are those hashed future commercial areas within the city center district area that I pointed out on the map. And to implement the Saratoga Springs economic development strategy by, retaining those non-residential areas on your map. So the next element is housing. This one incorporates the moderate income housing element that is required by state statute. And those requirements include considering the need for a variety of housing to meet the needs of people of various income levels and allow people of various income levels to benefit and participate in all aspects of the neighborhood and community life. And each moderate income housing plan has to analyze how the municipality provides realistic opportunities for moderate income housing within 5-year increments, and then identifies some strategies from a list that's included in the statute, and that the moderate income housing plan itself includes an implementation plan with benchmarks and timeframes. Saratoga Springs does offer a diversity of housing for different income levels and meets those those benchmarks. So your plan focuses on continuing to meet those benchmarks and offering a diversity of housing for different household types. We heard a lot about seniors in the community, and other, a full range of housing types for people just starting out, people who are just expanding their families, and then so on and so forth. So that's what your housing element focuses on, is a variety of housing types.
I'm going to jump in because I have a note on this one. Under Strategy E, allow internal accessory dwelling units, IADUs. I had to read this 3 or 4 times, and I'm still not sure I'm confused on this. I'll read the whole thing, and then I'll tell you where I'm confused. Accessory dwelling units provide an opportunity to address affordable housing, providing an economic benefit to the owner and renter of the IADU. In September 2021, I think that's what it says, the city adopted an ordinance to permit IADUs in designated areas. And this is where I have heartburn. Residents are permitted to apply for an IADU permit. So my first read through this, I'm like, oh, so it doesn't matter where I live or what my situation is, I could just apply and get it, which is not the case.
Oh, so that should say residents within those areas.
Permitted areas, but it's more than just permitted though, right?
In the IADU approved areas or?
Something like that.
In the IADUD, oh my gosh, in the letters, approved area that meet the state.
Well, it's city code. The state specified what we could do, but it's in code.
Okay, that meet the city code.
But we just had an application from residents who are in a non-approved area,
And then we.
right? So
we approved it.
approved doesn't mean
It
anything.
doesn't work, yeah, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
'Cause they don't
Well,
have to.
residents
They don't
really
have
are permitted to apply.
to. They are.
Right. But
Do
that
we
doesn't,
need a caveat in there
it's
saying,
factually correct,
right,
but misleading.
yeah.
And anyway, that's
Maybe just saying something like following the city's approved.
something like that.
Pro-
We need some
process.
help on the wording here.
Yeah.
Sarah and I will work on that.
It can be residents within IADU approved areas.
No, because
May
again, we had an application.
May apply for,
No, we had
They don't
we had
have to be
application.
an approved area.
Right. They don't have to be in an approved area. In fact, they're in a not approved area and they applied to be approved.
right, but what the separation is, what they're trying to do is create an approved area so they could submit for an IADU permit. Or so that they could get approval for.
I think it should just be follow the city process.
Something along
And
those lines.
then it
That's
applies
good.
to every stage of the.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in that section?
I feel like I'm being difficult, sorry.
No. We want to hear all your comments, and this is your plan.
I'm normally not a problem child.
So is there a plan? Because I know, like, obviously nothing's affordable for the median. It's not anywhere, right? So we say that in here, that's what I want to provide, but we also say we're not providing that. So is it, and I might have missed it in there, do we have a way that we are going to try to provide that?
So a lot of your housing is affordable based on comparison to median income and the market-based rents and pricing in place. So
The median income for the city,
for the city,
because it's high.
right?
I was shocked.
Well, that's where the state statute itself is a problem because it's the median income is determined by the city. So it might be median income, moderate income housing for someone who lives already in Saratoga Springs. But if you live in a city where the median income is lower than ours, they can't afford to live in Saratoga Springs in our moderate income housing. So I'm just making this up, but somebody from, say, like Vineyard, if their median income is lower than ours, they will see our moderate income housing as expensive. whereas someone from Alpine could maybe move to Saratoga Springs. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Or it's just within the city, you could move to moderate housing. But again, not within cities, and that's just the state law. So I think that's kind of silly. It should have been like by county or something. But, you know, we're simply abiding by what the state statute says.
And in terms of that, in your moderate income housing plan, the general plan brings in your current moderate income housing plan. Your moderate income housing plan should be updated on a regular basis. And so some of those strategies, some of those things will be updated regularly as part of the statutorily required moderate income housing plan update process.
So in these strategies, is the intent to state what we have done or what we will do?
So we're required to select 3 to 5 of those, depending on the size of our city each year. So there's about 20 to select from, and those are the ones that are most applicable to our city. So those are state-written options that we are saying we would like to use those options.
So
So
those are the strategies that you find on page 31.
Like, for example, strategy A,
Yeah.
we have, okay, we'll allow for a variety of housing options and types. And then it goes into what we have done. Is that a strategy, or I guess I'm a little confused.
So the strategy A is one of the strategies identified in the statute that the city of Saratoga Springs has identified as one of their strategies to address moderate income
What
housing.
we're doing is we're summing up what we've done in the past.
You're summing up what's in your adopted, this section is summing up what's in your adopted moderate income housing plan right now.
Okay.
And then, so each of those strategies, strategy A, strategy E, strategy G, those are the moderate income housing strategies that Saratoga Springs has identified from the statutory list. And then the bullet points beneath there are your performance measures, that what you have achieved towards
Up to date.
up to date
Okay.
to achieve that strategy.
We have to do an update each year, and this was the information we provided to the state at last year.
Okay.
So this section is hard because we need to provide affordable housing, but the residents are against multifamily. So I guess I'm just not sure, right? Like,
I
how are
know.
we going to do this? I mean, I'm reading the residents' feedback on here and stuff like that, and what we're trying to do to get more affordable housing, but it's going to be a fight the whole entire way.
Yes,
Right?
that is correct.
100%, it's going to be a huge fight, especially out here. We've all seen it for the last 15 years, 20 years, right?
Yes.
And so here we have this master plan, but then our residents are against this, right? So I don't know how do we do that?
I can't remember what section it is, but it's coming up where it talks about we need the resident, we need to do more multifamily type situations. We need to have design standards. Only problem is state says we can't do design standards on single or two-family homes unless it's in like a historical district or it's in a master development agreement.
Which we don't do anymore.
Well, so the deficit we have right now, as far as what the state recommends, based on 2021, we had. So there's 3 categories. There's 3 categories of affordable housing. So 30% of the average median income, 50% of the average median income, and then 60% of the average median income. And then within those ranges, we have to evaluate how much we have in each of those. But at the end of 2021, we were just like 1,000 deficit as far as what the state is recommending. So we're not that much of a deficit right now. Obviously, this year's numbers, because of inflation, that's going to change things quite a bit. So we do want to try to meet these. Otherwise, the state might have some mandates for the
I
city
get it. I just don't know how we're going to do it.
meeting them.
Also,
And you're right, it is a challenge. One thing we can possibly be discussing is, can it be met You know, because we do have developments with lots that are like 3,000 square feet. But the challenge with that is the home footprint that gets put on that can still be fairly large in comparison. So condos and townhomes are a good way to meet it, but we are also meeting that with smaller lots.
But also Prop 6
Right.
has recommended percentages for multifamily, and we're right now short of it. And so we could always add more multifamily. I mean, it's actually the opposite effect of what the people who did the Prop 6 for, but because they actually put a number, we could say, okay, we could build more multifamily housing because we're short of the number that Prop 6 allows or recommends.
And as a city, just as a whole, we're not necessarily concerned because we are close. And we do have properties like the city center district area plan that have a lot of entitlements for future residential. And if they were to maximize those entitlements, there's going to be more attached product on the property owned by SLR, the church property, the LDS church properties. So because the district area plan has a lot of density in it, and that was vested in 2010. So we don't necessarily, based on the amount we have vested, we don't necessarily need to be adding more to be able to meet this.
Okay, thanks.
And also, like, these are all statutory requirements that we have to have. So, I mean, if our goal is working towards them and we're stating this goal and this is what we're working towards, it doesn't mean that we have to be achieving that goal. It just is that this is what we're working towards.
I don't think the state's put any kind of penalty in
Yeah.
effect.
Not
Not
in
yet.
the goal or whatever.
Right.
We have not so far.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. That's the,
Yeah, that's the
They have not so far, but we can also demonstrate that we've taken steps, to meet those things. So, North Shore, for example, was along a future transit route if BRT goes in there. Well, I mean, it's planned to have BRT in there in the future. And so that was able to count. We also have a lot of properties that have zoning for affordable. Well, and affordable is really interesting because just because it's a condominium or an apartment or a townhome doesn't make it affordable. So being in a certain category doesn't necessarily make it affordable.
It's true.
So
Now anyway,
that's also a challenge too, is we can't look at it and say all attached product is affordable because that's not necessarily the case.
Thank you.
Any other comments, thoughts about housing? We're going to move to economic development.
I was going to take a break,
You were going to take a break.
Yeah, a break.
but should we take a
Okay.
break or should we just keep going?
Well, I think a 5-minute break's probably good for everybody.
Okay,
Okay.
good, because I need a 5-minute break.
openness, country.
All right, we're ready to continue, I believe.
Okay. We're on economic development. Are you ready?
Yes.
So the goal for economic development is to transition from a primarily residential community to a community offering full services. The strategies, and we've talked already quite a bit about this in terms of community values and in the land use section, which is to provide a range of opportunities for the development of non-residential types of development, specifically offices, stores, and services to support residents and visitors. So that's one of the main strategies for this section. Another is to continue to implement the Saratoga Springs Economic Development Strategy. And in that strategy is the stated goal to attract office employment and other types of employment. We included in the action items, can you point it to me, the one that, oh, yeah. Action 1 under strategy 2, it says, continue to identify areas for non-residential development to maintain the current ratio of jobs to population. Now, the current ratio of jobs to population is 1 job for every, no, that's not right. For every 3 households.
3.
Yeah. That's like, it was a lot higher. So we're talking about maintaining that ratio, but also changing the mix of the types of jobs. Right now, there are a mix of jobs, but it's primarily retail. So in this particular recommendation, we're thinking that it would be adjust that mix so that there's more office-based jobs or medical services type jobs. You've got
Or
IHC
professional.
and
Professional level.
And then the third strategy is to work closely with property owners. Once again, this is the town center within the city center district area plan, and also to continue to implement the waterfront strategy as an economic development strategy. So those, the economic development strategies also relate back to your land use strategies. Any thoughts or questions about economic development?
I was most interested in the potential stuff. like the furniture and home furnishing store, how much it could possibly generate? Where, I was, and there's other categories listed, electronics, sporting goods. We just got a sporting goods store.
Right, this was done, this leakage analysis,
And we, of course, we don't have any numbers because there's only been.
right,
one-
but this was completed before that.
How did they determine, how does those numbers, how do you make up those numbers?
So this, the federal government Department of Commerce puts together average household spending by category. And then that gets applied to the types of households that you have. So a household of 2 it spends differently than a household of 4.
Okay.
And so looking at your household mix, that gets applied to what a typical household spends. And then we collect sales tax data, sales data from your jurisdiction and compare it to what the typical households in your community would spend. And if you're not, you don't have the stores, or you don't have a particular type of store, the spending for that type of use or that type of product will leak to another community where they do have that store. But if you have more sales than the number of households that you have would indicate, say, in grocery or something, then you are attracting expenditures from other communities. So, say, Eagle Mountain's expenditures are leaking out of Eagle Mountain to Saratoga Springs. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's based on, typical consumer behavior.
We're hoping it leaks from Lehigh, at least I.
Well, Lehigh has set themselves up to where they have, with all the multifamily developments that they have, I just see it as a great opportunity for Saratoga Springs to utilize.
I thought Costco said they consider West Lehigh as part of the footprint for Saratoga Springs when they were looking at whether they should build a Costco here or not.
I could see that.
Yeah, retailers generally don't pay all that much attention to jurisdictional boundaries. They're looking at the drive time.
Only we worry about that
Right.
because
Well,
we want our tax money to go to Saratoga.
right, sales tax is important.
I don't know about you guys, but.
So that's how the data in that table is calculated. Any other thoughts or questions?
See, you had mentioned about the, now I gotta check myself before I ask the question. About the balance of job types. But I'm not seeing it in the strategies
So,
specifically, or am I overlooking it?
no, it's, we probably should add an action statement about the balance of types.
I think that would be good. It would guide our decisions and.
So that's about, so.
Did I miss it?
Erica just pointed out action 4, but I think that one focuses on just the overall tax base, retail versus services. I think we should probably add one that specifically says, pursue development types that will result in a diversity of job types within the community.
Yeah, one of staff's comments is going to be that this talks heavily about retail, but we also want other types of jobs.
I think it's.
So how do we do that? If a property owner says they want to build a retail store, do we say no because we want a medical center there?
No, we don't do that. What we do is, one of the things we're doing with this general plan is identifying where we want a city center to be, or, we're calling it a town center in here. And within that town center, what we want that to look like. And really, to have a successful town center, you do need some office component. And so our hope is to work with the landowner, because that's in the district area plan. And we're also going to be, as a city, our economic development director is going to be in this next budget year as doing a strategic plan that focuses on that downtown area, and then that will help us recruit the types of businesses that we want to see in that area.
So it's done through recruiting, not at our level where we approve.
Encouraging, recruiting, but also sort of teamwork with the landowner, convincing them that it will be viable there, and that's what the strategic plan will be able to report, the viability of the long-term goals.
Okay, thank you.
You ready to go for transportation?
We're ready to go to transportation and connectivity. This is another statutorily required element. In particular, the statute calls out the functional classification map that it be included in the plan. And your draft plan includes a functional transportation map. In addition to that requirement for the map, we need to also address connections between housing, transportation, and employment, education, recreation, and commerce, which your plan does. It calls out the importance of all types of connectivity between all of those functions and identifies all different modes of transportation for connecting all of the different types of uses. Saratoga Springs has a robust trail master plan and has already started implementing that master plan and is actively seeking projects to address transportation needs, road needs, and other types of needs, which is an important thing to make sure we point out. Your transportation engineer, or your engineer updated the transportation master plan just this year so this plan reflects the projects and the goals of that updated transportation plan. The goal of your transportation element is to reduce congestion in Saratoga Springs as the community continues to grow. And moving towards employment within the community, particularly professional office-based employment is a key strategy for that, to reduce the amount of travel required. And as I can't remember which council member it was pointed out, use both sides of the road at both peak times, both morning and evening, so that, everybody's not leaving all at the same time and then coming back at the same time. And also providing opportunities for people to access the goods and services that they need without having to drive very far. So reducing vehicle miles traveled through that strategy. The general plan also identifies transit-related goals and strategies, both to improve park and ride and bus services now, but also start to position Saratoga Springs for future either bus rapid transit or fixed guideway types of transit service in the future.
So Sarah, it's figure 6, no, this thing just, 610, figure 6.10 on page 49, shows a BRT light rail dashed yellow line. It's nowhere near where D.R. Horton's North Shore is. This is actually what's in the transportation plan? Because the ones I've seen, it kind of goes down and then loops back up. And then this one is like coming through the middle of Lehigh and down. And I know the UDOT stuff, they don't want to put anything near Pioneer Crossing. They want to do everything through the middle of Lehigh, and I think they're just going to have a war.
Dan, do you have any comment on that?
turn on his.
Oh. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't involved. I don't know where. Did this come from Brian Gallegos?
It should have.
Okay.
all those existing.
Yeah, let's check on that because last I looked at, I agree. I was aware of it being more on 145 out there.
Which one's 145? Is
Well,
that,
it ends up being
Pony
Pony,
Express.
you know, Pony Express area.
okay. But it doesn't go into Eagle Mountain doesn't it turn and go up towards like Smith's and then kind of goes up towards Corey Ride more?
I don't, I'll have to look.
Oh, okay.
Let us look
Yeah.
into that some more. It does,
I've never seen it over where it's shown on this map.
Well, yeah,
yeah, we're
what
not
I've
just
seen is it like,
plow a new
it's
road.
towards the, more towards where North Shore is and then kind of loops and then goes
Yep.
up towards Corey Ride and over that way.
Yeah.
We'll check on this map.
Yeah. Okay.
And then on 611, figure 611, I couldn't find major transit investment stations. There's an icon for it, but then there's nothing on the map.
So that map came from Wasatch Front Regional Council, and so they zoomed in, and whatever
Oh.
that icon was referring to, obviously, is outside of the zoom. So we will take that icon off.
Or we could just pan just a tiny bit over to Lehigh because I think
Because that's where it is, right?
happening next to the I-15 corridor. So I think if the
Right.
image shifted just a tiny bit to the east, then it would show
It'll
up.
show it, okay.
So what is that major investment corridors, that dotted line, what's that represent? Is that where they want?
What that means is the statute, it's not called out in that bullet list, but the statute requires us in your general plan transportation element to identify what is defined as a major transportation corridor, which is a road that that UDOT has put funding into over the last a specific time period, so that we acknowledge it and we think about the land uses around that type of transportation road, that corridor, that it has more volume. So we can put more intense types of uses around that type of transportation corridor. That's one of the statutory requirements, is to call out the major transportation corridors. And so that's what that is. And it's defined as something that the state has put money into.
So we want to talk to SLR, tell them that they need to accommodate that?
Well, your zoning, your future land use map does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we want all the high-rise residential along there?
Well, we're gonna have a fight with Eagle
by the way.
Mountain. They don't want high density along Pony Express. Which is what it looks to me like
Anywhere.
is.
Well, I think we need labels on there.
Because that's like Lehigh Main Street. And then it doesn't line up with the roads. It's weird.
It is weird that it doesn't line up with the roads, and we do know that it doesn't.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
fix that.
And it seems like, to me, the road that UDOT has put money into this area is Pioneer Crossing.
Right.
Would be that corridor, and it's not really lining up with Pioneer Crossing.
Right.
Okay.
Because SR 73 or Lehigh Main Street used to be UDOT's, but when they built Pioneer Crossing, that was jurisdictionally transferred to the cities. So, yeah, that's my thought.
And if they want to put high density in downtown Lehigh, good luck.
Is this image from, Christine, can we check on this image too? Just the
No,
date of that image?
Did we turn you off? Sorry.
Say-
Turn your microphone off. I always don't touch it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we have an older image there.
Because you're touching it and I'm turning.
It's like I could see it going up and on and on and on. I apologize. We're gonna, yes, Sarah, we were just talking about where that one came from and why the base map is different than all the rest of our base maps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened with that map. I apologize. Any others?
Can I make a comment on the last one that I forgot on economic development?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just looking again on in the summary on page 79. Can we include the ratio where it says continue to identify areas of non-residential development to maintain the current ratio of jobs to population?
Yes.
Thanks.
What page was that again?
On 79.
That was under the action.
So it was a 3-to-1,
Yeah.
1 job per 3 households, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Okay. So the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails section is one that we're going to be discussing with the city manager on Tuesday.
Yeah, that information was taken from our current plan, but we want it to be a little more updated than what's in there. So we're going to make some revisions.
On community facilities, this element focuses on how current and potential future facilities contribute to social interaction and a sense of overall communities and communities. So the goals and strategies is to preserve and protect. Is this? No, this is not the right one. Oh, here. To continue to provide community facilities to serve residents and visitors as Saratoga Springs grows. So continue efforts to develop a centralized city campus with an action to relocate City Hall adjacent to the public safety building. Evaluate the opportunity to include senior-focused programming in city facilities. Now, this strategy is the wording that should be in the action item under community values, where it talks about building a senior center. That discussion had evolved when we did this strategy. It didn't get translated back to the community values chapter, but it will now. The idea here is that a lot of communities don't have dedicated senior centers, but they do offer senior-focused programming in their other facilities, whether it's the community room at the public safety building or part of the library, to have some senior-focused programming. Okay. And then relocate and expand the library system, which we heard a lot about in our public engagement. And we also heard a lot about the cemetery site, which is to continue to move forward with the development of the cemetery site as planned and identified.
Wouldn't the cemetery be private? So why would that be considered a community facility? Or is that something that the city is considering making it a civic? Or
The cemetery is not going to be private, is it?
I thought it was the.
Well, no, it's going to be a city cemetery, also a Camp William cemetery.
Oh, okay, maybe
It's
that's
going
what
to
I
be a
thought.
veterans cemetery and a city cemetery.
Also wanted to ask, does this plan incorporate some of the ideas or plans that the county has in locating some of their community, civic buildings here in Saratoga Springs?
It doesn't.
Well, that's okay, though. I mean, we're working on that we're working on that with them outside of the document. And has the rezone been on the agenda already? The one that Ken's processing a rezone for that, for those county.
To make it institutional civic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then
instead of
we're,
office warehouse or whatever.
right, and then we're also contemplating if there's a way to do some kind of like, well, there's some other things the city's contemplating, sorry. But, right, so we're working on that outside of this.
Okay.
I have a question. It says provide greater access to information through various mediums. I don't really understand what that means.
That means books, online, web-based, e-readers, all the different ways that people access information now, not just by getting a physical book out of the library.
Okay, so is this more about accessing information or recreational reading or what?
Well, this is, I mean, we probably ought to rework that. What it's focusing on is that libraries are becoming more than just stacks of books.
Yeah.
Media centers.
Right, they're media centers. So most of them have computer access, computer centers, and
Okay.
kids go there and do things besides sitting there reading.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
I mean, you're accessing that medium and,
Yeah.
like, it makes sense to me, but I definitely would.
Reword that so it's easier to, yeah.
Hey. Oh, they're doing okay, and I can't turn them back on. I had everybody on, and now I can't turn anybody on. Anyone's microphone on. They've taken my power away.
It's the paper.
So do we have
Yes.
a line item for the cemetery?
We do, strategy 4.
We don't have any action items on that?
Or action
No.
items, thank you.
Oh, action items. We don't,
I read something, it's in there somewhere, because I wasn't aware that it was gonna be a city and
I didn't know that either.
veteran, and I read it in here somewhere.
right, so the strategy is to develop the cemetery site as planned in the northern area of the community.
I think we can come up with an action item.
Yeah, I'll work with Sarah and the rest of the staff to identify what the next step is,
I
right?
think we had them in the draft, but we took them out.
We took them out.
Right, but it was intentional. But we can add something in, though. I don't remember what it said, but I know we took it out, so, but it's fine to have something.
Okay,
I would just say also under what the community said on the senior centers, that senior-focused amenities such as pickleball.
a little too specific.
I mean, my husband plays a lot of pickleball. And
Ball, so
Kind of a
that's
I thought it was funny, and I actually texted to him. It's like,
He's a senior.
yeah, because I tease him about it. But like, it's a little.
That's okay.
I'd just X that one
I
out.
agree with you.
When we were creating Patriot Park, I hadn't played pickleball, and I Googled it, and all the pictures were seniors.
The
shuffleboard.
videos,
But I
on the
Shuffleboard.
online
It's-
videos.
it's
like shuffleboard.
40-year-old men.
Right, but everybody plays it. I know it's not age specific at all, so.
No, it is, and it's 40-year-old men.
My son and his friends play every single day.
Yeah.
They're 20. So.
So, Nicolette, it's
for
really
everybody, I
weird.
feel like.
On my screen, it's like I can't do anything, but Audrey, talking to your,
I think
oh,
it's,
okay,
yeah. Is this better?
yeah. Well, it's like this from, remember the movie The King's Speech when the guy's starting?
You
he
have to do your.
does all that stuff to warm his, anyway.
So community sustainability is another one of the chapters that we're going to be working with staff to rework.
Okay.
Nicolette, the recording didn't go off because this thing up here is rebooting.
We are so jinxed tonight. I don't know what is going on.
Okay. Now mine's like it rebooted.
Everybody's mic is on except for Fred's, so.
Just yell.
My 72-year-old mother plays pickleball.
go.
For everybody.
Yeah.
I guess I'm going to have to get
Just in
some
your neighborhood, it's the.
gear to go try it now.
And we're also reworking water preservation, which is the statutorily required element that was added by the legislature in the last session. So,
That one has to be reworked, you said?
well, the draft that you have in front of you, we're going to be reworking it.
Okay.
We just want to acknowledge all the things that we've been recognized for. So our city does well in this category, and we just want to make sure that this emphasizes that.
Well, I heard the state took some of their recommendations from what we've done.
Right.
Right, we've been, and Dan can speak to this, we've been recognized more as a model, like, hey, this is what Saratoga's doing, this is how other cities do it. And so we just want that emphasized in.
Can I just suggest on the 24-hour on-call emergency phone number, like, let's just put that number on there in that section. Like, there's not really a reason to not include it. And I would just say anyone who can additionally include that number and get that information out is good.
Did we do community sustainability? Did I miss that, Matt?
That's one that's going to be reworked.
Okay. And then the water, okay.
Did you have a specific?
No, I just don't remember us mentioning it. I'm like, did I miss something? Did I zone out?
We did.
Okay. And then the last element, is this true? Yeah, is natural hazards. Natural hazards that have been identified in the area include liquefaction potential, the wildland-urban interface, flooding, and
Quakes.
I think we mentioned something in there about a wildlife corridor. Is there any chance we are actually going to get that, Sarah? Because I know that the one big landowner, which I will not name, has said it's not in their priorities to do it.
That's a tough question. So we have drainage channels from the mountains through the developments that head to the lake, and we have that, they follow natural drainage corridors. So that, they're fairly wide, they're along, they're part of our storm drain plan. Those can double up as a wildlife corridor. Other than that, we don't have any specifically planned.
Okay. But, so how do we get the animals to recognize and actually use those?
Plant fruit trees in them, maybe?
You have to go out there and teach them one at a time.
So we just like send them an email? What do we do?
Build
No.
naturally, I mean, it's,
Hold their hand.
in Draper, they wander, but there's still certain areas that have natural vegetation that they follow.
Okay.
I get the sense, though, that the city doesn't want to recognize that we do have wildlife that wants to live here, I mean, I don't want to necessarily call them out, but like Mark Christensen is constantly talking about moving the antelope somewhere else, but they all always come back, and so are we
they
just not
have-
recognizing the fact that we have,
And that's okay, and, right.
yeah,
Part of
and
the-
so we don't want to create those corridors because we're not recognizing that those animals want to live here.
Well,
So,
we have to have landowners that are willing to allow us to do it. Eagle Mountain they did something really good with the landowners over there, but they had landowners that were willing to work with the
Part of
city.
it, yeah.
But they also gave some of the landowners concessions to do it. But if we don't have a landowner that's willing to do it, it's kind of hard to. I would like to do it. I'd like to still,
my half-acre house.
I would like to share somehow, but anyway.
There's a typo in the natural hazards.
where?
Underneath the action, continue to implement best practices to protect life and property. Yeah, an extra O in there, property.
It's helped.
Natural hazards.
Yeah,
I think
top of the table, the very first line underneath where it says action. PROPOERTY. It's a creative spelling, at least in mine.
This is in mine too.
Is yours different?
Under natural hazards.
What page is it?
It's on page 85.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Sorry, that's, yeah. I forgot to mention them at the
Oh, okay.
end of the document.
We don't spend a lot of time together, no. We'll find it. We'll find it.
Like which item, which number?
It's not even a number, it's right under the top
Oh,
table.
oh,
Second line, the second.
I see it.
Second row,
Got it,
third row maybe.
got it. Thank you.
you.
We didn't know you were in the table. That's where
Sorry,
the,
I
oh.
knew what I was
came from.
thinking, but
I was in the section, not the table, so.
Yeah, we were
bad.
looking and looking on
My
the
mistake.
actual natural hazards section. So those are all of the elements. The implementation plan is, gathers all of those goals, strategies, and actions from each of the chapters and consolidates them into one table. The columns in that table that have identified timeframes was just a preliminary look from the consulting team. We are discussing those with city staff on Tuesday, whether or not we actually even want them in there in that way. So the next time you see that implementation plan, it'll look different, but it will still gather all of your goals, strategies, and actions.
One of the concerns we have is we don't want this to be, like it looks like a promise or anything that we're gonna do that. And priorities can shift, for example, we're going to be putting the recreation center on the ballot. And if that gets approved, that becomes a top priority. If it doesn't get approved, then the rest of these priorities shift. So we don't necessarily want to have these timeframes because we don't want it to be misleading to anybody.
So I have a few questions from the appendices.
Okay.
Pete, can I
Yeah.
mention some before we go there while we're still on the natural hazards? Is that
We're on the
okay?
You moved
implementation
us
plan.
off the natural
Yeah,
hazards.
we're on the implementation plan.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We're on the implementation plan.
Anyway, we're including what's it called, strategy, continue to inform and educate residents and stakeholders about emergency preparedness through various strategies. And action 1, continue the CERT training and provide a visual manual and work to solicit more volunteers. I don't know what the visual manual is. And CERT training, is that for dealing with natural hazards? Or is that?
The CERT training is a community emergency response team.
Right. And I
and-
did CERT like 20 years ago in the city, but we didn't have the same natural hazards. Ours was just domestic, fires or.
Right. This is,
Earthquake.
this is CERT, these are volunteers that your emergency services,
Community emergency response team.
right, they'll take it. They train them in responding to
Whatever
different
they need.
types of.
So in natural hazards, are they utilized? I mean, if there's a grass fire up on the mountain, I'm assuming that I don't know, but do they use the CERT members? That's like
I
one
think
of-
that would depend on what the event is.
I don't know if that's included in the training. I don't know. My understanding is that's a higher risk. I'm wondering if natural hazards should also include just, I don't know what it would say, but natural and other hazards or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know what it would be, but
Yeah, I'll double check. We had the fire chief review and all of these strategies and actions, and so I'll check with him
okay.
on that.
Just if it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the natural hazards, then
Right.
expand the section there. Also, under complete emergency preparedness plan update, work with fire department to provide home-based plans for accountability first, followed by city alternatives. I'm not really sure what that means either.
I'll check with the fire chief.
Thank you. And also going back down to the other one, sorry. expand natural hazards plan through community feedback. I'm wondering if that really, the feedback should be coming from a geologic or geotechnical evaluation rather than a community, because
Well, there was the feedback about when the, what do we call that fire?
The Knowles fire.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and then the community, the feedback was that we didn't have a really good traffic plan. And it was very congested. People couldn't get out within 2 hours because there's only Redwood Road. And so I think that kind of feedback is important.
so maybe we can clarify what
So that should probably say based
information
on.
we're looking for.
Right,
Yeah. Okay,
okay.
thanks.
Okay,
It's all yours, Ken.
appendices.
On page, so what is this page? Page 3 of the appendices, in the middle section there, on the 4th paragraph. So this is more about Utah State, but I'd like to understand what happens. It says that property taxes won't go up because it's balanced. But what happens if all, because there are some areas where property taxes go down, some areas where it goes up, and so it's balanced out, and that way the city doesn't have to raise taxes. But what happens if all property values go up, like right now? If they're all going up, then doesn't the city have to increase property taxes?
So what the certified tax rate is set each year. And the certified tax rate that is given to each jurisdiction by the county assessor is set so that the jurisdiction doesn't generate more general fund, property tax revenue based on rising property values. So those increased values get blended out. And if all properties are going up, then that base certified tax rate would go down.
Oh, I
As
see.
the
Well,
jurisdiction
adjust the
is not
formula.
allowed to generate more property tax solely as a result of.
Okay, so the formula will be, well, the formula itself won't change, but the rates that the formula uses will go down in order to not increase property tax even
revenue
when
to the
values go
jurisdiction.
up.
Right.
Okay,
Now, it of course gets complicated that the jurisdiction is allowed to get increased property tax from new investment, from new development.
Right.
And so the county assessor does all of that.
okay. And then on the last chart on that page, why is there, I guess that retail gap, so I'm asking about why is there a gap, but I guess the retail gap was based on what you had said earlier about what should be, where residents should be spending money, but they're not because that's that leakage, right?
Right.
Okay, so I understand that. And then it talks about the growth in revenues, but what about the growth in expenditures? There's nowhere on there that talks about the growth in expenditures. So yeah, okay, we have growth in revenue, but without the growth in expenditures offsetting it, it's really hard to understand what the meaning of this chart is.
So we're meeting with the finance director to go over some of these numbers on Tuesday. And so we'll talk about adding in the expenditure side as
Okay, good, because otherwise we maybe just be negative,
right.
right? I mean,
Well,
if we only look at the rise in
In
revenue, it looks like we're just
have a balanced
positive.
budget.
So,
The city will always balance their budget.
okay, so I guess then all right, okay, so then that means that cuts are,
Right.
okay. But I guess I would like to still see the rise in expenditures as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And then depending on which assumption we use, our population can be either 65,000
Well, right.
or 108,000 by 2042. So what are we using in the master plan?
We're using 108,000.
Okay. Is that made clear somewhere?
If it's not, we'll make sure it is.
Okay, I didn't think, Yeah, because I kept thinking that we're using 65,000, but,
No.
okay.
That 4,774 new jobs needed is based on 100,000.
Okay,
I think it was based on the 108.
Yes.
okay. Maybe we make that clear somewhere in the summary or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it for me, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
So I have one more question. You guys have put a lot of work into this. I'm really, really grateful. There's a lot of grammatical
Okay.
errors and so forth. I'm wondering, is this going to be proofread by
Yes. Yeah.
someone? Is that,
Yeah. Yes.
that's all?
Okay.
Thanks.
If you do find them, you
You
can.
you can send them to us and make sure we get.
Well, I found a lot.
Oh, okay.
Just, I think, I was finding, and this is of course outside of the core information, of course, a lot of just grammatical errors. Some of the sentences and paragraphs didn't really make sense,
Okay.
especially to general public.
Okay.
It seemed to me that some of it can be condensed a bit and still say the same thing and be a more enjoyable read,
Okay.
I think. But, yeah.
So do you have a closing statement you want to make, or?
I was just going to talk about the next steps.
Okay, good.
Was that your question?
Yes.
So tonight we have the work session. We are planning for you to hold your public hearing on the general plan on July 28th. So that's a month from now. So we'll be reworking the sections and doing the editing, and you'll get another version prior to the public hearing.
How soon
We'll
before
get
the
it, we'll
public
s-
hearing would we receive that?
2 weeks,
Well, usually 1 week.
1 week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sarah, didn't your memo say July 14th?
Oh, we moved it.
Yes, but we've just changed that as of yesterday because of where we're at.
I'm glad I asked. So it'll be the 28th.
So we'll get that a week before, and so that one, as you're reading through, if you find errors, then make sure you email.
If there's any way to get it sooner, like 2 weeks before or something like that, without undue pressure, that's
Sarah,
helpful for
We're
me.
required to advertise 2 weeks.
We are, yeah, the advertising is 2 weeks ahead, but the packet is a week ahead. And that's kind of, I think that the timeline you and I talked about though, is that we're aiming on having it ready let me look at the calendar again. I think we're aiming on having it ready when we notice.
Right, so
So if we meet that, then we can get it to you.
that will
too.
be the 14th.
Let me double
I know
check
it's a lot of work.
what we were talking about.
Is there any way to get a red line version so that we don't have to read through the whole thing again? Or is that just not,
That's
Not
not, yeah.
Yeah, the
and
program,
I'm not reading on for grammar?
what's the program
Did you read
called?
my facial
Okay.
expression?
We can have a group study session
No, yeah, but
over
I don't
your
want to deal
favorite
with.
restaurant and
Right?
Yeah, forget,
Whatever.
yeah, I can't deal with grammar.
Our public notice deadline is the 14th. We had talked about the sections you're reworking to us by the 7th and then having us it by the 14th. But then I think staff was gonna look at it. Anyway, we, it's possible we can get it to you sooner than 1 week.
whatever you can do would be
Aim for
great.
We'll aim for the 2 week mark.
Something with this many pages is,
Yeah, it's heavy.
yeah, and my attention span's not the longest in the world.
It's a lot for me and I've been involved in every step, so I get it.
So the 28th is when we'll have a public hearing, and that's going to be basically the final revision that we'll vote on that night, right?
And you'll make a recommendation to the city
Okay.
council if you're ready to do that after the public hearing.
You guys did have a lot of questions for Christine tonight that I'm not necessarily equipped to answer, and Christine's not available on the 28th, so
So given the schedule, we could move that public hearing to your first meeting in August, which would be August 11th. And not affect the schedule with the city.
So if for any reason it gets pushed off of the 28th, it could go on August 11th, and we're aiming for September 6th with the city council, so it would still meet that if we bump it again.
If that's what it takes, it's better to have a good plan.
Yeah, so there's some room built in there just in case. So we have some sections for them to rework as mentioned, plus these comments, plus some other comments from staff. And then we all need to do a re-review, so.
I don't envy you.
We want it to be fantastic, so.
And
Appreciate it.
And so our goal is to get you as clean and ready a plan, have the plan clean and ready for you at your public hearing. So if in our exchange with staff, we have to move that public hearing again into the August, we'll do that. We have room to do that in the schedule, I think is the message. We're not rushing to meet a calendar date. We're trying to get you the best, cleanest.
Yeah,
plan.
and if it's
Yeah.
preferred to have 2 weeks to review it, then maybe
We do it on August 11th.
well, and then you could be here, and
Yeah.
I like that idea better.
Will it be a dedicated meeting just for this, or will there be other agenda items? Because if there's that, then it becomes impossible.
We don't know yet.
Yeah.
Just depends on, what's ready. It's not set to be a dedicated meeting just for this, so it will probably have some other items.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
So, next meeting is July 14th. We're just regular meeting.
Yeah.
I
July-
noticed we had a notice. Well-
We've got 2 items, 2 rezones on that, 2 rezone requests, right, on there, so, yeah.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll adjourn till July 14th.